going on, gardeners? It is Sunday, August 7th, and it is a gorgeous evening here on the southeastern coast of North Carolina. On today's video, I'm going to show you a complete guide on how fruit trees grow over the years at different stages of growth. That way you can plan for your future landscaping or your future orchard. You will know what to expect in terms of growth each year throughout the various stages of growth, how to care for them at those different stages, and of course, when you can expect the harvest to start rolling in.
If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing and hitting the bell to receive new video notifications, and check out our Amazon storefront and spread shop in the video description for a list of the gardening products I use and awesome custom designed apparel and other gear. Your support is greatly appreciated.
When it comes to growing fruit trees, or any tree for that matter, there's an old adage that goes, the first year they sleep, the second year they creep, the third year they leap. And that tries to describe how these trees grow when you transplant them from a container that you buy from a nursery. And it is very important that you understand this growth concept, because that will help prevent you from thinking that there's a problem with your tree when there really isn't one, and potentially killing that tree with kindness. It's important to note that every single fruit tree featured in this video will be a grafted fruit tree. None of them are grown from seed. I only grow grafted fruit trees for very specific reasons. To make a grafted fruit tree, you take a rootstock tree that is selected for a very specific reason, and you cut it and you insert a piece of wood called scion wood, and that scion wood is the named variety of tree that you want the tree to wind up being in the end, and that is also selected for distinct reasons. This gives you two distinct benefits. It allows you to choose a rootstock known for vigor, soil type tolerance, and disease resistance, and it allows you to use that as the foundation of your grafted fruit tree. You can also add properties like you can get a dwarfing rootstock, a half-size rootstock, or a full-size rootstock that will control the size of the tree to your liking to best fit your environment. Then you select the scion wood based on the type of fruit that you want. You select scion wood from a mature mother tree that is already in the fruiting phase, that has known quality, good quality fruit. That way you are guaranteed a wonderful tree. When you grow from seed, they're usually cross-pollinated, so you'll get a random cross and you may get a fruit tree that doesn't have good fruit. The other benefit is, when you graft on mature scion wood, that tree automatically thinks that it is the age of the mother tree. So if I take scion wood from a 15-year-old tree that's in prime fruiting time, that new tree will think it's in prime fruiting age as well. When you grow a tree from seed, they can often take 10 years to gain enough maturity in order to produce fruit. So I grow grafted fruit trees because I can select the size, they're generally more disease resistant, and they will fruit many, many years earlier. The first year that we plant a tree in ground, we say the first year they sleep. This right here is a first year fruit tree that I planted in ground. This was planted back in April, so it has been in the ground for about 4 months. And typically speaking, the very first year we can expect little to no growth. This tree, for the most part, looks exactly the same as when I pulled it out of the container that it was in 4 months ago, except for this little bit of new growth right here that I'm really surprised, honestly, I got at all. It's unusual to get this much growth on a first year tree. Now, when you plant a tree in ground the very first year, like I said, it is unusual to see a lot of significant new leafy green top growth, and that is for a very specific reason. When you put a new tree in ground, the first thing they want to do is develop a strong foundation and anchor themselves well with a big, strong root structure. So when you plant that tree the very first year, to the naked eye, it will appear that it is not really growing at all, when in reality it is growing. It is just growing underground, because without that big strong root ball, the tree does not feel confident enough to grow up into the air. I mean, you can't build a skyscraper on a little tiny house foundation. The foundation needs to be built before the structure. So that's why we say the first year they sleep. There should be little to no visible upward growth to the naked eye. And a lot of new growers get confused by this. They put their trees in the ground, they think nothing is happening, and they think that there's some kind of problem with their tree. And they can often overreact and start overwatering, over-fertilizing, and trying to give them way too much love because they think that there's something wrong with the tree, when in reality there is not. You just have to be patient because they're going to be asleep that first year. So the very first year, when you plant your fruit tree in ground, for the first week or two, you should be watering every day or every other day, unless it rains, to make sure that those roots can take root. And then from there, for the next couple of months, the next 2 or 3 months, you should water them 1 to 2 times a week, especially if it's very dry out and you're not getting any rain, to make sure that the trees have enough moisture to get established. And of course, make sure that they have a nice compost and mulch layer to keep the soil moist and to prevent evaporation and protect those young fragile roots. Whatever you do, just don't overreact and think that there's a problem. As long as your tree isn't drooping and losing its leaves, if it's staying stationary, it is probably doing just fine. The fruit tree that you see right next to me is my Ichijiro persimmon tree. This persimmon tree was planted late last spring. So this tree right here is in its second growing season. And we typically say the second year they creep. And that means that this is the first year that you will start to see some significant upward growth. However, it will be creeping growth. It won't be a full-on explosion. That is because the first year they spent that season putting down a strong root system. However, 1 year is not enough to really anchor these trees well. It takes a few seasons to do that. So the second year, they still will predominantly be putting most of their energy into root growth. However, that root growth will be more significant, so they will start becoming confident enough to creep upward. I'm going to overlay a video of my persimmon tree when I was planting it last year, so you can see exactly what the size of the persimmon tree was last year versus this year. And you can clearly see that there has been significant progress, but it's nothing that will blow your mind. It has just creeped along. And that is exactly what we anticipated on year 2. So we are right on schedule. Now, one thing that you may find surprising is that quite often, many times, second-year grafted fruit trees may try and actually fruit on you. And that happened with this tree right here. This is my second-year persimmon, already putting out several persimmons. And here's the problem with that. This tree is putting too much of its energy into fruiting. You have to be very careful not to let your tree overbear at this level of maturity because the branches are small and they may snap underneath the weight of this fruit, which can be pretty significant. So my tree initially fruited a lot harder than this, but it naturally dropped about half the persimmons. So I've decided to let a few of them stay on here. However, this fruit cluster is starting to get too large. I'm actually going to have to remove a few of them so they don't snap this branch. So keep an eye on that and don't get greedy off of your very young fruit trees or you could damage them. Now, while this tree does look very healthy and it is producing fruit, remember, it is not yet fully established. So if you have very hot weather and persistent drought, you need to water this tree. Now, fruit trees are not like annual vegetables. If they're stressed, they're not going to show you right away. So this tree could be screaming and hurting and not actually showing you outward signs until it's too late. So if you're having a hot summer that is very dry, I suggest watering this tree pretty well once a week, where you basically take a hose and you just drop it at the foot of the tree and you run it for about a minute and give it a few gallons of water, just to water it very deeply to make sure that you keep the stress level in check, because at this level of maturity they are not bulletproof when it comes to drought. When it comes to fertilizing, I like to fertilize them a little bit, maybe about once a month or so. Start off with some compost earlier in the spring, a few handfuls of 555 organic fertilizer, and if you want, about once a month or so, you can give it some diluted Jack's 20-20-20 or something like Miracle Grow Tomato that's balanced once a month or so. Just give them a half feeding just to keep them plugging along during the growing season. Another great organic option is fish emulsion. I love that. That is a great thing to give your young fruit trees. Now on to the third year, and in many ways, year 3 is one of the most exciting years when it comes to growing fruit trees. It is the leap year. The third year is now they leap. Believe it or not, this tree right here is a persimmon tree that is exactly 1 year older than the persimmon tree I just showed you. This is a Giambo astringent persimmon, and you can see how big this tree got. That's because this tree has officially leapt. It now feels confident with a strong, well-anchored root system, and it has responded by blowing up with new growth through the roof. Earlier in the winter, I showed you how to prune this tree after its second year, and you can see how much new growth it has put on from its smaller skeleton structure that it started off earlier this spring. Now, here's the funny thing. While that second year persimmon tree I just showed you was loaded up with fruit, this tree has no fruit on it. While it did flower and bear fruit, it wound up dropping them all. So it goes to show you that just because a fruit tree is on its third year, it doesn't mean that it's ready to carry fruit to maturity. So sometimes you can get yourself a fruit tree that'll hold fruit its second season. Sometimes the fruit tree will take 3 to 4 seasons. It's just hard to tell, so you can't always bank on that second season giving you fruit. In reality, we usually say when it comes to food forestry that year 3 or 4 is generally going to be the fruitful year for your small, young, new grafted trees. Year 4 is a very special year when it comes to growing fruit trees. Year 4 is, generally speaking, when you can expect your grafted fruit trees to start reaching their mature height. Both of these trees behind me are year 4 trees. Here I have my wonderful Lila avocado tree, which is a semi-dwarf tree. And here I have my amazing Owari satsuma tree, which is grafted onto a dwarfing rootstock. Both of these trees are pretty much at their maximum height, and they're fully mature in terms of the actual structure of the trees themselves. Now again, just because you have a year 4 tree doesn't mean you're going to have a bonanza of fruit. This Owari satsuma here has been producing incredible amounts of fruit for 2 seasons now, and actually fruited 3 seasons in a row. This was a tree that fruited for me pretty much immediately. Whereas my Lila avocado, while it has fruited for me every year, in the past 3 years, it has always dropped the fruit. So it's just not ready to carry the fruits to maturity, and that's kind of to be expected because avocado trees are just very fussy and they tend to take longer than other trees to really feel confident and hold that fruit. But generally speaking, once you hit year 3 and 4, your grafted fruit trees are really going to start taking off for you, and you're going to start getting some really good fruit production. But I wanted to end this video on a very special note that basically discounts so much of what I just said. If you are new to growing a food forest and you're just looking forward to getting one started, by all means, please start with fig trees grown from cutting, because they break all the molds. They break all the rules. The amazing thing about fig trees grown from cutting is they can fruit for you that very first year. So when I was initially starting to build up my edible landscaping food forest, I started very early with my figs. They were the first thing I grew. They were the first thing I put in ground because I knew I would get fruit off of them that very first season. So if you're looking to start your own food forest or edible landscaping setup, and I sure hope you are, and you ask me what I think you should start with first, my vote would go for the fig tree because they establish and fruit for you so quickly. That way, you can begin reaping the rewards of your investment immediately. So I hope you can take the concepts and lessons in this video and apply it to your own food forest or edible landscaping project, so you know how to plan for the future and so you know what to expect as your food forest grows and develops. So everybody, I sure hope you found this video helpful. If you did, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring that notification bell so you're notified when we release more videos like these. If you're curious about any of the products that I use in my garden in real life, they're all linked down below in my Amazon storefront in the video description, so check out that link to see what I use in real life. While you're there, check out my spread shop for custom merch if you want to support the channel. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see all of you again on the next video. Dale is acting very strange on his morning patrol. I think he found something in the garden. Kind of curious what he may have found. What's up, buddy? What did you find? Something either is here or was here. The ultimate security Dale will sweep them out.